Hello and welcome back to They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy, and my guest today is just absolutely fantastic. Someone who I've known now for, I think, about 4.5, almost 5 years. She is an amazing law firm owner and a really interesting person who's building an incredible business despite the fact that her state recently made a whole bunch of changes to the area of law that she's in, and she's figuring out brand new math on the practice. And I'm sure we're going to get into it, but I'm so excited to have on the show Mary Ellen O'Connor. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlie. I really appreciate you having me. So I'm really excited to spend the next hour or so with you, and it's always great when we get together.
Absolutely. So let's kick it off with what's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
So there were so many different things that they didn't teach me, math being one of them, by the way, but that was not going to be my answer. Creativity. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was creativity, and I was thinking of, SpongeBob and imitating Squidward. I'm trying to be boring. It feels like the whole area of law is like, let's teach people to be boring. We're going to be in dull suits. We're going to sit in our rooms and be dull, and the writing is very specific, so it's a lack of creativity, I would say.
On the suits front, I will say maybe the one exception are the criminal defense attorneys. They always seem to have the most fun with their suits. But yes, otherwise, it's a little dull. And look, that's not an answer that everyone expects, because I think a lot of people view law as some combination of professional, but also the idea of creativity coming through in arguments, in the examination of evidence and intellectual creativity. So tell me more about that stripping away the creativity.
So, in my personal opinion, I don't really think that we see a lot of creativity within the law. We have a very formulated writing process of IRAC issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. You don't see too many people straying from it, and you may feel like you are the greatest author going when you're out your first 2 and 3 years, and then the reality of the fact is that everything becomes a template, and everything becomes, how do I fit my rules or my case and my facts into the rules, as opposed to trying to figure out how to break the rules to make your case fit. And
So if
also,
you're coming out,
we
yeah.
all know that law isn't really just about the practice of law. It's as an owner, it's the ownership of law. So it's trying to figure that out, and it's like, well, I've only been taught to be dull, so now how do I move forward and be not dull anymore? And I know a lot of the attorneys are going to be listening, thinking like, I'm interesting, but not necessarily during 9 to 5.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Yes, I agree with that concept right there. Talk more about that idea of they're interesting outside of the 9 to 5. How can that come into the 9 to 5?
Right. So I think that so many people try to protect themselves from their work life and their personal life, and not mixing
Hmm.
the two. Which for me, I didn't really have that option. As you know, I grew my practice while my children were growing. So there were many
Mm-hmm.
times that my children were with me in court, or they would be around, they'd be coming to some of the events with me. One of the people that provided that I did work for, he would say like, oh, this is a great hotel, go to that one because the kids will love it while you're working. So for me, my kids came along with me, and my life
Yeah.
was intertwined, but oftentimes you don't see that, and people feel uncomfortable when they're talking about their life when it comes to their professional. They really want to keep this, wall up. But for me, it wasn't a reality that could happen. And in fact, it probably was to my benefit that it didn't.
Well, tell me more about that. I mean, I love that concept. So let's dig into that benefit that you describe, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I think that so many people look and think, and people are like, "Wow, you're a lawyer," and I'm like, "Well, I'm not a doctor saving people's lives, but I'm making a difference in people's lives." But I always think of that, and I think that people look and put attorneys up on a pedestal,
Hmm.
and when I can say like, you know what, I'm just like you. I just happen to be doing something different on my 9 to 5. I've got children. I've got to do nighttime stories. I've got to get homework done. Got to make sure that they get to their sports activities just the way that you do. People can relate better, And also, they want to feel like not just another number in your law firm. They want to be
Hmm.
heard. They understand. And you know what? There'd be many times when I'd say that I'm calling you at 8 o'clock at night because I wanted to get my kids down. And they appreciated that, you know, the honesty of it. And they understood like family first and, you know, clients a close second. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, people really did appreciate that. When my father passed away, it was very interesting the number of people who came to his wake and knew him just through stories and things like that of my clients. So, you know,
Wow.
when you're dealing with that, you know, I've been this is actually my 15th year in practice, and owning my not in practice, but owning my business. September will be 15 years. So a lot of my clients have been through a lot with me. My one of my sisters
Mm.
passed away actually the anniversary of her death. And people were super supportive. And when you're honest with people saying, listen, I'm working on your file, I can't call you every day because I'm also dealing with a family issue, people get that. So I think
Yeah.
that when you are honest with your clients, um, that's how, you know, people refer to you. I mean, when we first met, and I was telling you that I didn't even know that I needed to have a website in December of 2019, and your jaw dropped. You know, you're like, well, how are you getting clients? It was like word of mouth, and you know, it really is a word of mouth for me more than anything else because I think, and I do think, it was my openness to share my life with people.
That vulnerability is not a common trait among firm owners. So, is there something from the past for yourself that either informed that level of vulnerability, or was it something that you grew into over time?
I think that you know, I'm not 100% sure, and it could be my dad was an
Mm.
attorney, and I would tag along with him a lot uh, and sit in the back of the courtroom. But I don't know if it was because of that or if it was just, you know, I'm a pretty straightforward person, and I try to be
Yes.
honest. So being a straightforward, honest person just leads me to say, like, this is it. You know, there are people who love me, there are people who hate me. It is what it is. You're gonna what you see is what you get, kind of thing. I mean, in kind of a funny story, one of the colleagues of mine who worked for the New York, I don't know if well, one of the insurance companies. I was going to say that. I don't know if it matters if I say the insurance, but he was joking around and he was like, you know, Mary Ellen, I really appreciate it. He's like, you know, I get stabbed in the back a lot. He goes, but I really appreciate you. I see you coming right at my jugular. You know, so you know, it's kind of
Yeah.
like you know what you get with me.
Yeah. No, you have always been definitely one of the phrases that I would associate with you is straight shooter, right? You kind of come out and say what's on your mind, not in an aggressive way. Instead, it is a, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is my actual thought process on it. And it's interesting, perhaps in a world in the profession of law where there's not exactly subterfuge going on, but uh, there's a willingness to hide the information until say the right moment, right? To have that moment of discovery with someone that is, or there's the old adage, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And you seem to be the person who's, when you're interacting with people, putting the information out there in a relatively, I would say, not just honest, but in a candid way. You're upfront with the candor. So I often find that type of quality is both a great positive and a great negative. I'd love to know how it has affected you both to the good and bad in your life.
So I'm sure that it probably has affected me in a bad way, but I've never measured it or thought about it because
I
I mean,
love
honestly,
that answer.
because
That's so
that's not
good.
productive for me. I mean, I hate to say, but like that's just not productive for me. Um, it's about, you know, how is it helping me? Okay, it's moving me forward. And I guess maybe if I wasn't moving forward and didn't feel that I had, you know, some success, or if it wasn't working for me, I would have to do a reevaluation. So I do think it
Mm-hmm.
works for me, and I think that um, again, it is working for me in my opinion. Now, there may be a lot of negativity that works with that as well, but I try not to focus or look towards that negativity if it's there. Maybe I should be more reflective in looking at that, but I rather spend my time focusing in on the positive aspects of it and, you know, shining that rock to make it gleaming as opposed to necessarily focusing in on the negativity of it.
You seem to have a real ownership of self where you seem to understand who you are and the effect that you have on people. Again, is that something that how much of that was innate versus how much have you perhaps crafted that or enhanced certain elements over time? Or is it really just this is who Mary Ellen has been and will be?
So I think that nature versus nurture is always a big question, right? So
Yes.
I do think that I was very fortunate. I'm the youngest of eight, so people really didn't. I hate to say, by the eighth, you're kind of just brought and dragged, and you better adjust to people. So it probably provided me with a great opportunity to do sociological, psychological analysis as a child, not even realizing I was doing it, of trying to figure in how do I adjust when I'm with these people, adjust when I'm not with those people my own age, adults, my brothers and sisters, friends. So probably my people skills were probably formed without me even realizing it through, you know, a nurture maybe more than a nature. I think I was very fortunate that in high school, my parents did send me to an all girls school. So if you look at the research and the analysis of when people go to a single sex school, especially women, that it provides them with the opportunity to have leadership roles that they may not have had at a co-ed school. So I do think that you know the whole looking at the overall aspect of my life. And also, just, I never really was afraid of trying something new, also.
Hmm.
So I was a teacher, and then I decided when my twins were 6 months old to go to law school randomly one night.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah,
Every single time I hear it, it's still astonishing.
yeah. So, and everyone, I know that everyone was like, she's crazy. And I was the only one who didn't think I was crazy, and I did it.
Hmm.
So, again, I think not worrying what other people have to say and listening to other people's opinions is an important thing. And feeling and knowing that your gut feelings is you can usually count on your own gut feelings. Now, certainly, I've made a few mistakes listening to my gut feelings, um,
We all
but
have.
but generally speaking, like, if I really listen to my inner self, I have, pretty good outcomes. And the times when I don't, I have regrets.
Hmm. Well, one of the things that you've obviously done that's exceptional is the law firm that you built and are continuing to build in the workers' compensation space in New York. It's like you said, when we first met back in 2019, it was a referrals only practice. And I know that referrals remain the dominant source for you, but as you're looking at growing this firm right now, what are you looking at in terms of how you scale a firm that has been referral dominant?
So, what we have been doing is we've been growing our team, because better customer service provides more clients. More clients want to refer people to you.
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, um, workers' compensation, at least in New York, I can't speak to other states, is a volume business, and you need to have a lot of
Yeah.
cases. And the fees aren't as high as in personal injury, because we're limited to 15% of some cases, of some of the fees that we receive. So our fees are not the same as personal injury attorneys. So trying to navigate how we're going to provide excellent customer service and not make people feel like just another number. And the only way to really
Yeah.
do that is to increase staff and increase automation. We're working on the automation, but I wanted to get the staff in place first. So we've been really successful with having people, my feeling is it doesn't matter where you're sitting, it just matters the work that you're doing. And
Hmm.
I have been working in some capacity in a hybrid situation since 2005. So for me, when COVID hit, it was like no big deal because my whole team was already hybrid. So we made that transition like seamlessly, where I know that other people in my industry and in all industries in law were
Yeah.
having difficulties. So I think it's that adaptability too. So I've been able to really grow the team and just keep it moving. And I think that's the important thing is because if clients feel like they're being treated well, and then they know someone else who has an injury, and they'll say like, "Listen, you want to be treated well. This is where you want to go." So it's nurturing our clients and providing the best service possible.
I see the two interesting challenges here of one, the remote space. And these I think are like positive challenges. I'm really excited to talk with you
Mhm.
about what you're doing to not only make the most, but actually turn it into a net positive. But you have the how do we create customer service at scale, and how do we do this while having a remote team? This would kind of speak to both the internal culture of the firm, but also the external culture of the firm. What do you think you're doing well on those fronts?
So one of the things that we do is I believe that my onboarding process has gotten really good. I can't say
Hmm.
that it was always that way, but
That's
we've
the
been
honest
really
truth. Yeah, for all of us.
yeah. So we've been really fortunate to have Jessica Morris working with our team. Jessica was a New York State Workers' Compensation paralegal, and she
Hmm.
went out on her own and created the Paradigest, and she actually does training of the paralegals. So when we hire someone, we have them come in and learn our computer system. We use Ring Central for videos. Our Slack channel is through Ring Central. We use Smart Advocate, so they start to get used to our technology. 2 to 3 weeks, and then they will go and 2 weeks of full on training of learning New York State workers' compensation and how to
Hmm.
provide great customer service to our clients. We have continuous learning for them on a weekly basis where we'll teach on a subject, we'll bring people in to teach them, we'll teach internally. Some of the attorneys will teach them each other, they will teach each other. We also do paralegal office hours, which I think was the like a brainchild that we were getting a million questions, and it was kind of
Hmm.
like it's not fair to them because in the office you can pop in, that they have that pop in. You're like, oh, is this right? You know,
Right.
but you're getting a million questions. They don't want to move on because they don't want to know if they're right. So we started to do paralegal office hours. It's each attorney gets what and one the head paralegal. So we have every day of the week someone has the office hours, and it just obviously, but the paralegals will pop in on a Zoom call, and any questions they have get answered at that time. So it's great because it builds camaraderie. On Thursdays, we do, I call it a coffee clutch, where everyone just comes in and kind of like a water cooler hour, come in, talk
Oh,
about
nice.
things. Yeah. We do team game day once a month where we'll, play bingo or Pictionary online, and, we have winners, and, we raffle off money. So even with the customer service, we've been working on our Google reviews. And, if you
Hmm.
get a Google review with your name mentioned in it, we did a big raffle of like $500. We did like a 3 month process. And the more times your name was mentioned, the more raffles you had in the pick. So just trying, and they had fun competitions, and in the Slack channel, they'd be like, "Oh, look how great I am," joking. I have to say they really get along really well. So I should say, like, kind of joking around. And I actually had COVID back in early February, and hadn't even realized that, like, at the end of the day, they do their own happy hour once or twice a week,
Huh.
and they invited me to come to their happy hour. So like when they end their shift, they're all having a virtual happy hour. So it does build camaraderie, but it's a constant, constantly having to make sure that you're working on it. And if it's not you per se as the owner, you have to have other team members working on it because it's not going to just happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people wish that culture would happen by accident because the idea of the culture is just, it's just me being me, and eventually people learn to be me
Mhm.
too. No, not how it works. You mentioned this onboarding process. obviously those sort of things start from zero in most spaces. So on behalf of the audience, I'd love to know, for someone who hears that and goes, yeah, I would love to have sort of 2 weeks of training, but I'm so scared. I need to bring someone on board. I need them to start working right away. I'm bootstrapping this thing. I'm doing $300,000-$400,000 a year in revenue. What would you recommend to that person to start stacking up wins on the onboarding front?
So I gave them a moment of pause, thinking, like, oh, well, we can train internally ourselves. So that was a mistake because it always ended up costing money in the long run. People weren't trained as well, or it took longer to train them. So I do understand that when it's just you and you're just hoping that you're going to get someone and by osmosis they're going to figure it out, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like, they're smart, they're this, they're that. Why can't they just figure it out? It isn't going to happen that way. I do highly suggest, even if you have Zooms or Looms or a whole book, that you take and do the 20, even if you have one person, you take and do 20 minutes, give them 20 minutes a day of your time, and ask them questions, let them ask you questions, because you're going to see if they're a good fit earlier on, because some people we've been doing it with, and they don't make it to the 2 weeks of training because they're not a good fit for our team. But I'd rather find that out in the beginning, and I wouldn't necessarily know that if we just sent them for the 2 weeks of training and then they came. And so we try to do the first, again, I think that 20 minutes, even like I said, we do an hour and we have different people doing it, but that time every day when you're onboarding or you're hiring someone new is crucial. It's crucial for them and it's crucial for you. First of all, they're going to know that you have a vested interest in them as well. Because the reality of the fact is at the end of the day, if we were all billionaires, we're not doing this. I always say that to my team, like, guys, I get it. Like, this may not be your ideal job, and who doesn't want to be just traveling for life, right? I mean, I know you just came back from New York. If you and your kids and family could travel, we're not trust fund babies. So
that's right.
That, like, people want to feel that they're doing a good job. They want to know that they're on the right path. That's right. Most people can't work independently and just be, ticking off the tasks and being happy. They do need the accolades, and it's important to provide the accolades.
So you have that 2-week process where you said sometimes people don't click. That sounds like classic hire slow, fire fast. Have you ever had to terminate someone within that first 2-week period because you just went, oh no, this is a bad fit and we got to do something about this?
Oh yes, all the time.
What does that look like when you have to do that?
So that looks like me telling my assistant, it used to be me, but now I've gotten better at delegating.
There we go. Good.
Just let them know that this isn't going to work out and we'll pay them for their time.
That's tough, right? That remains, I know, one of the struggles for anyone who runs any type of small business, definitely law firms, is that moment of, wow, I'm going to have to send this person, and I'm going to be extreme in the language, I'm going to have to send them out on the street, right? But sometimes that's a subconscious thought that starts to creep forward. How do you, as a leader of the team and of the firm, how do you handle or process that type of decision?
So earlier on in the process, I don't think it's as big of a deal, honestly. In the first 2 weeks, I think it's I think it's very difficult. And when it's an in-person hire, I do try to tell them, come on in for a day or two. And I'll pay you for the half day that you come in, so that you can see, and it's a lot easier. And I guess potentially those first 2 weeks are that kind of like, come fill us out, we'll fill you out kind of 2 weeks. So, and I don't really define it that way for people who are working remotely for me. And maybe I should be defining it more that way for them. But we do say that we have a 90-day trial period. But again, I don't need to keep people on. I need to make sure that my clients are properly uh, have proper service. I mean, listen, these are people who need their checks, they need their medications, they need their treatment. And if I'm hiring someone who isn't going to be able to provide them with what they need, then I'm failing my clients. And at the end of the day,
Hmm.
you know, my loyalty is and my obligation is to my client, not to my staff.
Hmm. That is something that I think that's a really important and valuable reminder, Mary Ellen, that you just issued there, which is making decisions from that client-centric perspective. And I know that obviously in building a practice, there are certain things where you have to, in service of the client, but also in service of yourself or of the business of the team, build it up. But it's interesting to hear the client-centered nature of the profession being used as part of that type of business decision. So for someone who is dealing with that moment, I mean, look, you and I both know firm owners who they're under $1 million. They've got a few people on the team, and most of the people have been there 4, 5, 12 years. And now they've started to grow and they're starting to realize, I don't think that this person is ready for what we're doing, and they may be resistant to it. As a firm owner yourself who has a growing practice, what advice would you give to that person struggling with that decision?
So I faced that myself, but I have provided with, looking at the person and their personality and their
Hmm.
traits, saying, okay, you've been in position A for a really long time and you did a really good job with it. However, position A is changing. So I think that position B is going to be better for you. And I had one
Hmm.
person who said, no, it's not. Thanks anyway. Bye. And I
Okay.
had another person who said, great. How can I get there? Great.
Ah.
Let's get you trained up. So I am happy to keep all of my teammates who understand the bus is moving and they want to keep going with it,
Hmm.
um, and trying to fit them into positions that will work for them. But sometimes you just can't put, you know, a square peg into a round hole either. And at that point,
Absolutely.
that's when you have to say, I'm doing a disservice to my clients because this person is holding them back. And I could be spending that salary on someone that could be assisting them or moving them forward.
Hmm. Also on the people front, I can recall a stretch of time where you were in the midst of growing the practice, you were bringing on more leads, but you also had some turnover. You had some team members who were temporarily out. You had some team members leave. I believe you had someone who passed away, as I recall, as well.
Correct.
That is a lot to handle as a firm owner. What did you learn from that time in growing the practice?
That I had some really fabulous people on my team, and we were really resilient because we had
Hmm.
a young lady who went to law school. The person that replaced her thought that coming in at 10 or 11 was okay. So we had to let her
Oh,
go.
interesting. That's a choice.
Yep. Someone who's had said like calling in sick to find out that they were down in the Dominican Republic partying. So
Interesting.
sorry.
That sounds like
Thanks
a
so much.
fatal illness.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for playing the game, but bye.
Yep.
And then we had one of the attorneys who was with us who passed away from cancer within
Hmm.
6 weeks of his diagnosis. The other
Oh,
attorney went out 2 months early for maternity leave because, and she almost died during, giving birth. So we had a lot of stress there. And the office manager went out a month later to give birth. So again, it's sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do, and you got to roll up your sleeves, answer the phone, and just dig in, and it gets better. It gets better.
hmm.
I mean, there were many a morning that I was in my office at 6 a.m. working till 9 and getting things done. But again, my clients knew we were drowning. Listen, we're doing the best we can. We're down 6 people. We're building the team back. Vanessa will be back from her maternity leave. You know, we're building back better, and that's what we did.
Mm.
We built back better, and I have been able to put in some backup plans too. So I have a backup paralegal who just does backup work when people are sick, people are overwhelmed with
Oh,
their jobs, someone's on vacation. She's trained enough so that she's a float. We call her the floating paralegal. Like what who needs help or someone's on vacation, she's going to fill in for their cases this week. So we have learned from that and grown from that. And I think that's one of the best things is that some people will be like, oh, it was a failure. No, it's not a failure if you learn. You can't fail if you learn from it.
that putting in the backups. I don't know many people who have. I know some firm owners who have the part timer who's almost like an accidental backup. They just happen to have a more established role. So with those backups, is there are those people partially being trained to where they could become full timers, or are they going to stick as real backup for the firm?
So what we actually decided to do is we took our strongest paralegal, or one of our strongest paralegals. I actually have really excellent paralegals right now. I mean, the strongest team probably I've ever had, and they're
Mm,
wonderful. So, so not to say that one person is better than the other, honestly, but I took one who's really strong
yeah,
and said, "Hey, do you want this position?" And
interesting.
she really at first didn't want the position. She was like, "Oh, I like my clients. I have my, I have my group." And then she said, "You know what? Actually, I do." So that's what she's been doing. She's the floater. So again, we've got 8 people now. Everyone's got 2 weeks of vacation. That's 16 weeks that no one's covering.
Uh-huh. That's
So
interesting. I imagine
you know,
that the floater
and
as
then
well also.
sick day. Then you have sick days, and we we give if your birthday falls Monday through Friday, you get your birthday off, and um, and then another say another week of sick time. A lot of my staff are moms, so they don't get sick, but the kids get sick. So
Do they ever?
yeah, or it's you know the so and so has a little reception at school for 2 hours. I don't really want to take the day off. No problem. Go take your lunch hour, and we have the backup to
Mm,
cover you for those 2 hours.
interesting. I could imagine that having an experienced person in a backup role also allows some level of spot checking of the work and adherence to processes and systems of those other team members. Is that something that you look for from that float paralegal?
No, I didn't, but maybe I will now.
There we go. We're building good
I
ideas
just
together.
you learn something new every day. There we go. There's my learning curve for today.
Good. We've started early on it. That's excellent. Yeah,
Yeah.
one thing I appreciate that you dropped in earlier, Mary Ellen, is the sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get the work done. I find in a lot of the law firm success space, there's a lot of discussion about removal from the firm. There's a lot of discussion about how to get as far away from it as possible, as opposed to earnest discussion about those times when, and they happen. It's not just a bed of roses here, where it gets really tough and you do have to get the work done. So for someone, and you talked a little bit about it, that there's a reward on the other side. For someone who's going through that type of period and they're starting to perhaps resent their relationship with the law firm, what advice would you give to that person who's caught between I want to be removed, but I think I'm supposed to roll up my sleeves, but I hear all this literature that says, no, you got to be away from the business, that conflict that happens. What advice would you give to that person?
So I think that person really needs to decide what role they want. If
Mm,
they want to be removed from the law firm, then they need to hire someone or work towards a plan to hiring someone to remove themselves from the law firm.
mm-hmm.
But if they really enjoy being an attorney, then they need to be looking for hiring a CEO. who can do all of the business ownership, because you can do both for a period of time, but you generally can't do both for long periods of time and do it well. And yes, you
Mm.
can definitely hire assistants and directors of operations, which will allow you to do both for longer. But
Hmm.
ultimately, you need to put a plan into place so that you can get to where you want to be. And I think that you need to have a timeline. And it doesn't necessarily mean 3 or 6 months, it could be 4 or 5 years, because
Right.
there are some real challenges. But knowing that you have a plan and you need to stick to the plan is important. So I think that that's one of the things I would say. I mean, I'm in that process right now.
I was
Um,
going to ask you
and
about
it's,
it.
yep. So I'm in the process now. And a couple of years ago, I would have been saying I'm hiring a CEO. I would never give up being an attorney. Never. But we've had that transition now where
Yeah.
we're not physically in court.
Yeah.
We do all of our hearings and court appearances via Zoom, which to me is not fun. I like to be around
Yep.
people and I like to have fun, even though I was taught to be dull in law school. So, um, so I have changed that plan and,
Hmm.
looking to just be the owner of the law firm. Right now, that's still not realistic, but I am starting to put in that plan. I'm starting to build the foundation to get to that point. We're still in the basement. I'm hoping it's probably going to be a 5-story building. So I got a lot more time, about 4 or 5 more years, but I'm getting there. And I
Yeah.
can see where I'm going. I don't know that I would have been able to say that last year, this time,
Hmm. What are
because I
some
was just
big,
coming out of that chaos.
yeah. I know that was, I mean, that would be overwhelming for literally any human being. That was a lot for you to be going through. I'm curious, as you look towards building that 5-story building, are there any particular milestones that you have in mind of like, you want to be at this particular level or occupying this particular role where you really know the plan is marching forward as intended?
Well, again, I saw a new bright, shiny star that I've now hooking my star to. So I was at my mastermind down in Key West last week, and they kind of all challenged me, and I was like, oh shoot, I was like, I was taking a left, and you guys are all now being like, no, 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 you're gonna go right. So I am. I want to say yes, but I am really not so sure anymore. No, I do. I do have a
Yeah.
plan, and one of the plans is to um, but it's more about hiring, like who I need to get on the team.
Hmm.
Like I need to get a couple of more young attorneys on the team by the end of this year, so that in
Hmm.
2 and 3 years they're trained up, so that I
Mm.
can be fully removed from my lawyering, if that's what I want to do. Obviously, I can always pop in and do a case here and there if it's something that I'm interested in, but um, not necessarily that I don't want to have client interaction and deal with the clients, but I don't necessarily want to be the one before the judges.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and it's a kind of a core thing for you, that idea of being around people, but it also brings up the larger question of technology within law and its effect on the practice of law. When you're looking forward with the practice, obviously we have the advent of AI that is the dominant discussion. But what do you see going forward technologically for your firm, and how that might affect its ability to grow, to serve, your ability to move into that CEO role? Is there anything that you're starting to integrate or are looking forward to in the practice?
So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. Listen, there are a lot of issues and problems with AI. I
Hmm.
don't, you know, but there are a lot of great things about AI as well.
Yeah.
And there's just trying to discern. the good from the bad, and what's a bright shiny star for me that really get there, and it's actually dull. I mean, it's a lot of fun trying to figure everything out, and it's enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I still think that it's in its infancy, and I think that there
Yeah.
is so much that it's going to be bringing, not just to the law, but also to the world. So I'm not 100% sure, long term, we don't, I know that for some other areas of the law, personal injury, the demands that can be done by AI, things along
Yeah.
those lines, like we don't need that in workers' compensation. So I'd certainly 110% be like right on doing the demands and things like that, because I think that utilizing something that's going to assist you killing 4 hours of an attorney's time uh, is wonderful, because I don't think that you're going to, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't want my team to hand in an AI demand, but I think it cuts all of the hours down substantially where the rote information can be provided to them, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can, you know, edit and fix it and bring it up to pace. So I think that there's going to be a lot more that we'll see that will be great, personally. But I think that, Congress is very concerned about what they're going to do with the AI and the AI voiceovers, and I do see a lot of
Yep.
abuse of it. So it's going to be trying to figure out the good and the bad of it. But overall, um, I'm excited about it, and we're leaning into it as much as possible, um, personally. But I don't know. I don't know where it's going to bring us in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And one thing I do hope, and one of the things that I have concerns about is, you know, having where the judges are just running everything through AI, making a decision instead of
mm,
uh, having the human. I think because it takes, one of the things, I guess my concern is taking out the human element and taking out
yeah.
humanity. And I think in the law you don't want to take out humanity, um, no matter what it is. But
Yeah.
so that's where I help. I listen. I think it's a good assistive device. I don't think it should be the end all and be all of anything you do.
I think that is uh I wish more people thought of it that way than going in extremist angles with it. So, Mary Ellen, before I ask you the last little trio of questions here, if people are interested in connecting with you, learning more about your law firm, or getting to know you better, where should we send them?
Okay, so my website is nyworkerslaw.com, www.nyworkerslaw. And you can reach out to me. My office number is 914-595-4502. And my email is Maryellen, all one word, Maryellen @nyworkerslaw.com. And anyone who has any questions, especially any women out there who are trying to figure out how to juggle kids, homework, and running a business, more than happy to give you a few insights of some good bribery.
You know what? Let me go ahead and make this pledge right here. I'm going to have you back for a not too far in the future, sometime this year, having you back for another episode to talk exactly about that subject. I'd love to have you and maybe a couple other uh, women owners of law firms to talk about that, because I'd love to put that out more. I
Yeah,
mean, as someone
yeah,
who, yeah, yeah, I
absolutely. Like
juggle
I'm
the
on the other
kids as
side of
well.
it now, so it's nice
Yeah.
because I'm on the other side of it now. My kids are young adults, but I'm also going through it with so many of my team members who have children and bringing them up.
Yep. All right. So, last little trio. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
So I am reading The Big Leap, which Kia sent to me, which I'm really excited. I just started it
Awesome.
yesterday because it came in the mail yesterday. I am watching Expat, Expats.
I don't know that one.
I think it's on Amazon Prime, and it is about the aftermath of, the beginning talks about when people you focus on the victim of a disaster, but what about
Mm.
happens to the person who caused the disaster? What happens to the family and the impacts of an event?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was great.
fascinating.
Nicole Kidman's in it. It's light. It's not light. It's not light. It's heavy, but it's not. That just came off. So anyone who's gonna be like, she's crazy. Um,
That's
it's a
perfect.
very
That's
heavy
perfect.
topic, actually, but it was a very interesting, flowing topic.
I gotcha. And then what are you listening to?
So I have been listening to a lot of cold case podcasts recently,
Hmm.
which has made me decide that a lot of people got killed in this country. I had no idea.
I was listening to someone talk about copywriting recently, and they said that a lot of these like cold case or investigation podcasts uh, do such a good job of the open loop storytelling architecture, and they suggested that every copywriter should have at least one of those podcasts that they listen to understand really effective storytelling structure. So I mean, there's a huge plus right there.
Yeah, I was getting a little tired of listening to so much business stuff, and I was like, I need a break from everything, and so I went cold case.
Hey, there's a reason it is the most popular category of podcasts is for
Mhm.
very, very good. They're fascinating. They're absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Mary Ellen, I so appreciate you being here on the show, and I look forward to having you back on in the future.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was great, and as always, it's always a pleasure being with you.
You as
Thanks,
well.
Charlie.
And thank you all for listening, and we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.